let's first talk about the first assignment before. So my plan is first assignment for today, and then go over an in-class assessment, assuming we've got more people show up. If not, I'll wait until Wednesday for that in-class assessment, since that's fine as well. It's just basically a kind of a pre-test. So here's the material. I want to know what you know. Attendance so attendance. Is attendance mandatory? The answer is that attendance is expected, and you will certainly benefit from being at your lab. Is it mandatory in the sense that that you will be directly penalized for not showing up? No, you will not be directly penalized. However, it's 2 hours of time for you to work with someone else, with your group mates or someone else. I do understand having to take a really early train to get there. I really do. And so I sympathize with that. I mean, and if that results you being in a little late in order to get there at all, I'd rather you show up a little bit than not at all. Okay. So I want to go ahead and just talk about this. So we were doing Rabbit Hunt and we had a return. Let's see. I'm just going to do model.stay. You know, this is the default. Rabbit just stays put and gets and the fox goes and runs and tries to eat him. Okay. So I mentioned though earlier that the only way to really get a good grade, to get a 100% in this grade, okay, is to cheat. So today I'm going to elaborate on that. So if you did figure out a way to cheat on this, so in other words, to break the code in Rabbit so that you can, yeah, we don't need any of these variables actually. So I was checking somebody else's over-engineered example. So anyway, we need it. So if you figured out how to break it, please take a moment to turn it in so that I can honor it. Honor that your break. I will, if you manage to break the code and get 100 on it, I will honor that, provided you also show me a working solution, you know, in general of really doing it. Okay. But I will honor the 100 if you manage to break it. So please upload that now if you get the chance, because I'm going to show you how to break this. So the issue is that so what we have here is that we've got a model view controller model of the system in terms of how this is set up. That is an old paradigm for graphical user interfaces, and you can see we've got something called the model, the controller and the view. What in the world are those? So the controller and view both rely on kind of the GUI end of things. So I'm going to go ahead and run Rabbit Hunt, and then I will change Windows to show you. I just need the Rabbit file to be uploaded. Okay. So this in here. So what we have in here is this grid, right? And everything moving inside this grid, you know, the fox and the bushes and stuff, that is our view. It is basically the view represents what we see as the user, what gets displayed to the user as the internal logic. The controller is all this stuff about how I can interact with it. It's the buttons, it's these buttons over here that let me kind of say, close it, but also like this dial over here saying how fast it's going to go, whether I want to reset it or not. That's the controller. These kind of things. So the controller and the view are useful for the GUI, but they're not the internal logic. The internal logic, okay, and let me reshare because that was done inelegantly. The internal logic is handled by this. It's handled by our by the model. Now the model here is actually been split up into multiple parts and multiple objects. But the model is the internal logic, and we can kind of actually see that here with let's see. Well, we go up to the instance variables and we see private object field, which defines the field, the literal grid that you're working in. private number of rows, number of columns. Here's information about the rabbit. Here's information about the fox. Here's information about where that fox and rabbit are located. Boolean, rabbit is alive. Flag to use the end of the game when the fox wins. Boolean, game is over. Things we could do. So static Boolean, whose turn, letting us know whose turn it is. So ostensibly, if I had access to the model, right, that gets passed in over here, you know, I could do like model, I could do like this dot model dot game is over is equal to true and just end the game right here. Except, of course, model. So animals have a model. Okay. This is they have access to the model. Right? This is where that's the logic. So it can consult the logic. However, and this is useful like for some of these built-in functions like the look function. However, thanks to the way object-oriented programming is set up, model is private and you can't look at your parents' private variables. You just can't. It's one of the things you can. Now, if it was a protected variable, right? Oh, this starts to sound familiar. If it was protected, we could totally do that. And I could run this and I could just totally do this. Right? I could totally do this. And I could say, basically my decide move says game is over, true, right? Yeah, as soon as I decide to move, my decision to my decided move is to end the game. Right? That's there you go. Okay. On the so but again, one of the rules is you can't change anything but rabbit. So that has to remain private. But the idea here is that if you can mess with the model somehow, then we could do things like put the fox or the rabbit in a place that's outside of the grid, like at a negative position. We could change the number of turns. We could figure out, we could mess with it in some way. But you don't have access to the model, except in one place, which is the constructor. Now you might go, okay, model dot game is over is equal to true over here. But then you're going to get into, then everything kind of blows up. There's no default constructor in animal. Insert super. So what this turns out to be is that there's one weird rule in Java, and I honestly, and I teach this, and I have no idea why they use this rule, but it's the rule that super has to be the first thing in a constructor. So if you call super, it's got to be the first line in there. If you don't call it, it's going to implicitly call. If you don't call it, notice that what it does here, it says there's no default constructor in animal, meaning there's no constructor that just takes in nothing. So the first call has to be to super. It just is a weird rule of Java with object-oriented programming. You know, and then I can accept it because Java is great in other ways. So here then I can then do game is over true, and all I've done is modify rabbit's code. And again, the only winning move is not the play. If you manage to figure out this kind of breakage, I will honor it, but I do want an actual real solution over here too, if that makes sense. So just, I wanted to clarify that because I do honor it. I get about one or two students who figure that out every semester and then ask me if that's okay. So the answer is yes. If you figured it out, it's okay. And I will honor it, but otherwise, submit it. Now for everybody else, it's going to be like, oh, I can't get I can't get to 100 and I'm already not, I like to have 100 in my assignments. So what we're going to do, let's see. And I think
Professor, I just have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was a little late. So basically, instead of like escaping, like we can just like literally like game is over. We can set the value equal true. So basically,
Technically, but
oh
I want to see a real solution. Okay, I'm saying that if you did break it like that,
yeah,
if you did get the rabbit to cheat, not you cheat, but you got the rabbit to cheat, okay, then I will honor that, provided you provide me with a real solution as well,
okay.
you know. So okay, give me 1 second to, okay, there we go. So let me go ahead and edit this also to be due. I'm editing something to be due next week. So, okay. But, I know some of you that leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth as to like not being able to have 100 in all your assignments. Well, fortunately, we're going to begin to solve that today by both what we're about to do now and also during the assignment for part of the assignment for assignment 2. So I will have just so let me just share my screen over here again. So I will have just shared, published a quiz. It will be found under assignment, so it will go for assignment points. You can also find it under modules, and I will also, because we're in Zoom, drop it in chat. So if you go over to the module 2 array lists over here, it's going to be the first thing. It will have a due date of January 30. It's called CS3 Pre-Knowledge Quiz. Okay. I will go ahead and drop it to you in chat. Okay. So give me a second so that you have a direct link to it. Okay. And before you take it, please just listen to me. Okay. So what this is that this is a pre-mastery quiz. Basically it's a way for us to see what what students know, not like what you know. I don't really care about what you know in terms of this is, but like what percentage of students know stuff going into this class. And then I can compare it to what students know going out of the class. And, so it gives me a before and after set of data points. Now, obviously it's a bit unfair to ask you 5 questions that I'm going to be teaching you the answers to throughout this semester. So this is technically worth 0 points. But why should you take it? Because it will be worth 5 extra points. You will get 5 out of 0 points for taking it. I just ask that you don't use IntelliJ, Eclipse, or any IDE. Don't use your notes or the internet. Don't look up the answers, please, because you're just going to get 5 extra credit points no matter how well you do. Make sense to everybody?
Yep.
So is that any questions about this? Full disclosure, this is part of a research project I'm doing. I do have our IRB approval for this. But this is just doing this also does help me with research, as well as figure out stuff for this class. So you can go ahead and start the quiz. I'll give you about 10 minutes to work on it. And if there's any issues accessing it, please let me know. Okay, and then once this is taken, we will get back to our regularly scheduled programming. All right. All right. I'll drop the link in chat again. Please let me know if you have any difficulty finding it or you can't find where it is. Zoom recording. Okay, so I know that 2 of you or so are still finishing up on that. That's okay. Just a minute when you can. And again, don't feel bad if you did not know answers to this question. I say this because if a couple people mention it, that means that more than a couple of people were thinking it. These are the kinds of questions I want you to know by the end of the class. Okay, so and I'd be, mildly concerned if you knew the answers already before coming in, because that kind of implies that maybe you should be in the next class. So anyway, but this one isn't too bad. So how are people, so before we move on, how are people doing on the current Fox and Rabbit program? I believe I have it set for a deadline of tomorrow evening. Do people feel like that's feasible right now? Do people need me to go over that a bit more before we continue on?
Just a little bit more time, not too much, but if you could make it Wednesday or Thursday night.
I think
Right.
Wednesday night is definitely okay. You know, it's this, normally I don't need to really extend it, but that Monday, that missing Monday from MLK is just kind of a, okay, so that's easy enough to change, and it's changed. It's to
Thank you.
Wednesday evening.
I have a quick question about the quizzes. Are those gonna be, are those ever gonna have due dates, or are we just supposed to pace ourselves throughout the semester and do them?
Last semester, I didn't put any due dates in. If you think that you can pace yourself and do them, then that's fine. These are useful self-checks for you, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So, but you do want to do them. They do count for a small portion of your grade. Again, you should have an unlimited number of attempts on each of them. But if you do not, please let me know so I can fix that up. Okay.
And the Redux search extra credit that has no due date, right? We can do that anytime
Yep.
we want.
The regular expressions, you can do that anytime. That it will be that as long as you turn it in by the end of the semester, you will get, how many extra credit points did I say? 15 extra credit points.
Thank you so much.
This is just to incentivize you to spend 2 hours learning regular expressions. It takes about 2 hours to learn regular expressions. For the quizzes, I think you're either graded on your most recent or your highest. Yes, you can demo your Fox and Rabbit in lab tomorrow. I'll also be able to stay behind a bit today and take some demos, because you know I'm at home and I don't have a train to catch as a result. Also, last to note, I've adjusted my office hours. They are now Thursday morning and Friday afternoon. If you need to meet with me at any other time, if you're already scheduled with me for an office hour, you're good. Okay. This is not affecting any office hours that are already set up. But for any new office hours scheduled, those are times that I've opened up. If you need to schedule with me in the evening, then just send me an email and we can meet in the evening. Okay. But these are for times that you don't need to email me for. All right. With that, let's get into the array list exercises. Okay. So this is our first of the 2 quote unquote boring homeworks that we're going to have to do before we get into the our more regular assignments. These are basically the kind of questions you would have for array lists, but for arrays, but now done with array lists. So if you have not had the chance to watch the module 2 videos on array lists, for the first few questions, you will want to watch the first 5 videos. For the last question, you'll kind of need to understand how array lists work internally. So you'll want to watch 6, 7, 8, 9 for that last question to understand why what you wrote is not working. Specifically part 9, but you need those. But if you just need to get started on the homework, the first 5 videos should cover it. Specifically, and the big thing that you will not have learned about from Professor Fiore is the use of generics. Okay, and that's part of what I'm going to help you get set up with today. All right, and I have this nice PDF over here if you are unfamiliar with generics or you didn't watch the video about that. But the idea here is that in Java, you can make lists of things. Again, I'm not going to go into huge detail because I have a video you're supposed to watch about it, but you can make a list of things. You can specify that the list only takes in integers. So the way that variable looks is that rather than saying list, you would say list, and then you have these less than sign and greater than sign. And what this does over here, just focus on this over here, it says that this is a list that doesn't take in objects. It doesn't take in strings. It only takes in integers. If you don't give me an integer or an int, in that case, then I'm going to reject it. I'm going to cause an error. This is extremely useful because it prevents you from accidentally adding things of the wrong type. It also means that that Java can assume that when it's interacting with this list, that the objects it's going to get out of the list are integers. This is extremely useful. However, it would be extremely there are some programming language. There is a programming language called Go. It is made by Google. It has generics in it. Or sorry, it did not have generics in it for the longest time. So if you wanted to make a method that worked on a list of integers, if you want to write a method that worked on stuff, you'd have to write one method that would work for a list of integers, one method that would have to work for a list of doubles, one that would have to work for a list of all sorts of types. It was a pain. Or you'd have to do some like very cautious coding. Java, though, supports generics, which means you can say, I don't know what the type is going to be. So here we have this in my example, I have suppose we want to write a method called in, which given a list and an item, checks to see if the list contains that item. Basically, is this item in this list? We don't know what type the item will be. And we don't know what kind of list is it a list of integers, list of strings? We don't know. So we want to write a generic method, one that's going to work on a list of strings, a list of integers, a list of objects, whatever. And you'll see me write something along the lines of this. You'll see me use E as a generic type, basically meaning that it's a variable representing a type. In other words, this is kind of a variable that will be filled in by whatever type we need when I call, and Java's going to figure it out through magic when I call the method. Java doesn't know what you want to use, so we will use, so what we do is that when we write a method, I do it something like this: public static E Boolean in. And this tells Java it's a public method. It's a static method, meaning it's not associated with any specific object. It's just a method. It's a verb. E. Whenever you see an E, Java, please note that this is a generic variable, meaning that it's a type. We don't know what type it is. There's not actually a class called E. We're going to replace that with whatever it is. So you'll find this will make more sense. If this made no sense to you, watch the video, specifically get to video 4, lists and generics, as well as this first video. Kind of has a broad overview of that. And then we have our 6 problems that we're going to work on. I said 5 because 2.5, I'm going to do that in class on Wednesday. And in fact, I'm going to say something in class that is a bit weird, but if you want to try testing out ChatGPT on not question 5, question 4. I'll do question 4 in class because that's the trickiest one. If you want to try out ChatGPT on question 4 and see how well it works, please let me know. I'll give you permission to do that because I'm going to give you the answer to that one anyway on Wednesday. So try it out yourself before Wednesday. But I will go over the answer to this one on Wednesday for you. Okay. And no, I have not decided on the due date for this, but it will probably be not this upcoming Wednesday, but the Wednesday next week, which is, give me one sec, the 1st. Okay. So anyway, here's our 6 problems. First is uniqueness. Given a list, returns true if all the items in the list are unique. In other words, are all the items different items? Return false if there isn't a unique item. All multiples and all strings of size. Once you can do one of these, you can do the other one. Write a method called all multiples. It takes in a list of integers and an int. It returns a new list of integers which contain all the numbers from the input list that are multiples of the given int. What? Okay, here we go. Suppose our input is this list: 1, 25, 2, 5, 30, 19, 57, 2, and 25, and we give it a 5. Okay. Then I want all the multiples of 5 from this list. So my answer would be a new list containing 25, 5, 30, and 25, which are all the multiples of 5 from this list. Make sense? 25 is listed twice, of course, because there's 2 25s. So you don't have to worry about like handling what if there's repeats. You just don't care. If it's a repeat, throw it in. Make sense? Similarly, all strings of size takes in a string and a length, return a new list with all the strings of that length. So if my input string is I like to eat apples and bananas and 3, then the new list should be eat, and, because those are all the 3-letter words. Everybody with me so far? Okay. And I'm sorry that I didn't give you too much time to work on stuff today because of just waiting for people to join Zoom, as well as going over the Fox and Rabbit and going over this. This is pretty rare, but I will, Wednesday will be all devoted to this. And again, I will stay after class if you need a demo. So 2.4 is permutation. Returns true if the 2 list objects are contained the same, are permutations of each other. In other words, do they contain the same elements, including the same number of duplicates? But they don't have to have the same items in same order. For instance, 1, 2, and 4 and 2, 1, and 4 are permutations of each other. Another one is the word wolf and the word flow. That's one I use a lot. Those are 2 words that are permutations of each other. You can you can take the letters and rearrange them. String to list of words takes in a string, produces a list of words separated by spaces. So for instance, if our input is hello and world, then our output should be hello. And notice that we kept the comma, and world. Notice we kept the exclamation point, right? So in other words, convert this list into a string of words. The single string into a list of strings. For extra credit, and you can get extra credit here, you just sanitize that string, get rid of all those, all that extra punctuation. So hello and world over here, it become nice and clean. Here, I mentioned, I give you some hints on how to do this, and how to get the extra credit done. So, and that's also your first incentive to learn regular expressions, because I start talking about them. And 2.6. Remove all instances. So this one is the trickiest one. It's not the hardest, but it is the trickiest one. Your first attempt at it will most likely blow up. That's a feature, not a bug on my end. I deliberately put this one in here because it is tricky. So write a method that called remove all instances that takes in a list and an item. Okay. The method then proceeds to remove each item in the list that matches a given item. So for example, if we give it 1, 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 2, and I pass in 5, then the method removes all the 5s from the lists. So my list then becomes 1, 4, 6, 2. This is a void method. It returns nothing since we are modifying this original list. Make sense? So 1, 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 2. I highly recommend you test it on this input. Okay, because that will help you because not testing it on that input might mean you missed the edge case that I included in there. That helps me know whether or not you coded it correctly. So anyway, and if you come and demo it to me and you think it's working, this is what's going to happen. We'll demo it. I'll test it on this one. If it fails on that one, I will just I will point out what the issue is, and I will tell you to go and fix it, and then you'll fix it and get full credit. It's nothing to stress about. Okay. So, and if you're having trouble with it, if you do identify the issue or see that's not working, but have trouble identifying what the issue is, I'd be happy to talk about that with you. So now each of those is worth 15 points, I believe. Yes, each of those are worth 15 points. 5 points each for using generics. So you have to use generics in order to get full credit. Okay. And then the issue, let's see. Right. If you like, and again, you will get credit for what you turn in. Okay. 10 points for making sure that you've got neat code. And then this part over here, the sanitizing the string, is worth 5 points of extra credit. Any questions?
So this assignment doesn't have any files we need to import into.
Nope.
Cool. Thank you.
Nope. So let's go ahead and get you started though with that. Okay. So new share. New. Project. Array list HW 2023. There we go. This window. All right, so let's go ahead, and first thing you don't want to do is you don't want to call this homework array list, because then Java's going to get confused. Maybe call it array list homework or array list exercises, but don't call it array list, because then Java's going to think that's the array list file you want when you're making new array lists. It gets very troublesome. So array list exercise. So let's go ahead and take a look at that first one, unique. So it's a method called unique that takes in a list and returns true if all the items in the list are the same. Public, static, Boolean, unique. And if you're trying to furiously copy it down, don't worry, I'll drop it in chat before we go. Or when I'm done. So this takes in a list, some list, okay? Doesn't recognize the type list. That's okay, because we have to import it. Import class, boom. Java.util.list, great. And with these kind of things, with Booleans, like checking if something has a quality or not, it's always good to make an assumption and try to disprove it. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return true, meaning I'm going to assume that all the items in this are unique. And the minute I detect two items that are the same, I'll return false. Make sense? So, now notice that this is highlighted. I've got a warning over here. It says raw use of parameterized class list. This means that I didn't use a generic. We want this to work. Right now, it's kind of a list of objects, and we didn't really tell what kind it is. So what I'm going to do over here is, in order for it to get to work on stuff, I will use generics. So I'll say it's a list of E's. Okay. And what this does, and let me go ahead and create my main method, which is easy enough to do by typing PSVM and hitting tab. So much easier than writing it all out. So what we'll do over here is that if I'll go ahead and create a list of integer L1 is equal to new array list, and automatically imported it for me. List of string L2. So here I've made a list of string and a list of integers. L1 dot add, I'll go ahead and add 5. L2, I will add the word 7. Okay, and now I'll go back up here and I'll say sout system.out.println. Again, just sout and hit tab. I will do list, print out list dot get, which gets the thing, gets an item at a specific index, get 0. So get the item at index 0. If none of this makes sense, don't worry, just watch your videos. But the point I'm trying to make over here is that if I run my main method now, and I do unique on list 1, on L1, it will print out 5, the integer 5. And if I run it on L2, it's going to work on 7. So it works on both strings and integers, which is great. And here's why that's useful. It means that we can assume that everything in here is the same type. That means that when we compare each things to each other, we can assume they both have equal methods and things like that. Okay. Now for problem 2, so this is how you set up the header for problem 1. For problem 2, all multiples, let me go ahead and do some copy. And there's the paste for that. Create a named all multiples, which takes in a list and returns an int. Public. Static. So here we're going to write it takes in a list of integers and an int, and it returns a new list of integers. So the return type is a new list of integers. And takes, let's see, yeah, it's called all multiples. And it takes in a list of integer. Now, why don't I just put this in the document? Because you got to see the error that is about to happen before, in order for me to, because watching it on paper and watching it live is completely different. So it takes in a list and an int x. Okay. And so list of integer output is equal to new array list. Return, assuming I can type, I swear I know how to do that. Return output. There we go. Always make sure your code always compiles, even if it's, basically an empty method like this. So this is how we do this one. We specified that this only takes in a list of integers. So all multiples, right. So if I do all multiples, L1 and 5, that works. Okay. But if I pass in L2 and 5, notice that it's giving me an error because it says you need a list of integers and you're giving me a list of strings. So this prevents us from accidentally putting in the wrong type. And because we know that it's integers now, we basically know that we can do integer operations on these. Now, the reason I bring this up is that the most common mistake I see is that a lot of students think, oh, since I'm using generics, I should put integer here. Okay. Now notice what happened is that the color of the variable changed from being black. The color of integer here changed from being black to blue. And now if I try it on all multiples, great. L1, it works on L1, but it now works on L2 as well. What in the world's going on here? Well, what this did over here is that when we do this over here, we're just saying that E is a placeholder. It means we don't know what type E is going to be. We'll figure it out when we call it. That same thing happens over here. We're saying we don't know what type integer is going to be. We don't know what type integer is going to be, but we'll figure it out when we call it. And so you're saying integer is not actually a number. We're saying integer is just a placeholder word like foo or bar. And so you don't want that.
So, Professor, we don't have any array right now. So will it be user input or it'll be assigned value?
You just call it from main to test it. You can call it from main to test it. For me, these questions are generally simple. For this specific one, this is simple enough for me to look at. Simple. I should say the solutions that you create are direct, not simple. They are direct enough that I can look at it and know what the answer, if you've got it right or not. Okay. So but for your purposes, you can test them out. So I've just went ahead and dropped that in chat. Okay. So any questions? It's noon right now. So I do want to give people time to work and ask me questions on their homework if they do have questions. So I think I'll move to that phase right now.